But I thought I'd share my usual silly joke with you, which is I stumbled upon this old minister joke. I like jokes about ministers, and this is about a country preacher, small country church he has, and he decides to skip services one Sunday and spends the day hiking, out in the woods and wilderness, and he kind of rounds a sharp turn in the trail, and he runs into a ferocious and hungry-looking bear. And he starts running for his life, and unfortunately he trips over a little precipice, and he lands at the bottom, having injured both his legs, and he's helpless to move. And the ferocious bear is kind of running toward him, so he prays. He says, "Dear God, forgive me for skipping service this morning. If you'll grant me one favor, I'll never lie again. Please make a Christian out of that bear." And at that very moment, the bear drops to his knees right before him and puts his paws together and says, "Dear Lord, thank you for this meal I'm about to receive in Jesus' name." Have you heard that one before? Good Christian bear. Well, I'm very into soaking up this wonderful spring. It's like every day there's more greenery out there. The trees are leafing out in fullness. Flowers are coming up everywhere. I've been tracking a sequence of wildflowers that comes up in our little plot, and it's just a delight to see the color every day. It feels like nourishment to take that in visually and to smell it and to see it and to encounter it. It feels like a kind of spiritual nourishment. And so that's what I've been thinking about, soaking it up and reflecting on that. It's really a law of abundance. My earliest minister was a minister by the name of E.V. Ingraham. We called him Ingy when I was a kid. And he was my mother's minister of a Unity Church in Cincinnati when I was a toddler. And he talked about the law of absorption as a fundamental principle of prosperity, of living an abundant life, to absorb. And it's throughout the natural world. We know all around us things are soaking up, vegetation, wildlife, and human life as well. We absorb the nutrients we need. We absorb the sunshine. We take in the water. The plants are soaking up that sweet rainwater coming down, the sunshine coming out, the warm temperatures, the nutrients out of the soil. It's a basic of growth that we absorb what we need to flourish and to grow. And spring is a wonderful time to reflect on that principle and how well we're using it in our lives, I think, because there's so much absorption going on all around us and so much lavish supply being provided for living things. We see it all around us right now. That's just as true in our lives. We don't always experience that sense of a lavish flow coming our way, of our being richly nourished abundantly and easily. But that's definitely what our spiritual way showers have taught us about supply for us. Jesus' wonderful teaching on this was about considering the lilies. He said, "Consider the lilies, how they grow. They neither toil nor spin. Yet Solomon, a king, in all his glory, was not adorned like one of these." They're gorgeous, they're beautiful, they draw whatever they need, they absorb it easily without effort or strain or storing anything up into barns. So he says, do not worry about what you will eat or wear or anything, for your Heavenly Father knows that you need all these things. Just strive first for the kingdom. Strive first for that sense of God with you, and all the rest will be added. This is not always our experience, that our needs are being provided for easily and in abundance. Thank you. Our challenge using the law of absorption. It sounds easy, doesn't it? We just soak it up. We just take it in. Thank you. I think one of the biggest issues we have with it is that we absorb the wrong stuff. We absorb the wrong stuff. We're soaking up the wrong stuff, even kind of abiding in it day by day, soaking up the wrong stuff. So our sense of using the law of absorption is misdirected. I think it's interesting that they have a new term for this. Scientists talk about this, and psychologists, as the negativity bias of our brains, that we have this tendency to focus on the negative, to to focus on threats, to focus on things that threaten us or make us insecure, possible dangers, concerns for the future, lack of supply, things that could go wrong. And they say it's kind of part of that brain that goes way back to like prehistoric times when maybe we ran into ferocious bears and had to be aware of possible dangers in our environment every day. But now, that part of our brains isn't serving us quite so well. And especially if we are finding that we're kind of stuck with a misery that just keeps coming back to mind, or a fear, or a dread, or something that have you ever had that feeling that like you had a worry in the evening and then you go to bed and then the first thing in the morning you pick it up again? Has anyone else ever done that? It's like it's a bag by the bed, you just pick right back up. And I don't know why our mind searches for it, but that negativity bias helps me explain that a little bit. It's kind of wired in there. It's a part of that brain that's in there that I have to kind of rein in. I have to work with that a little bit to redirect it. And I've had instruction in that in my life experience. Had a few bouts with depression over the years, as I'm sure some others in the room have as well. I remember going through a bad one in my grad school years, and I was much of part of the reason, or what was feeding it a lot, was that in the environment I was living in, there was a lot of focus on negativity. There was a lot of focus on social injustice, on kinds of issues. There was a lot of focus on everything that was wrong with the world. That was kind of the environment that I lived in that academic world at the time. And I was focused on it a lot, every day, and was unable to sleep with some of my concerns about the suffering in the world. And so I sought out a minister, and it was a Science of Mind church in town at that time, and it became my first real anchor in terms of a spiritual community. But I remember up to this day, a sentence he used in that first conversation I had with him, and I was sharing all these miseries and my depression, and he let me talk for quite a while, and then he said, "What's the payoff?" And what he meant by that was, what's the payoff of this line of thinking? Where is it getting you? What's the reward? What are you getting? And it kind of brought me up short because it wasn't getting me anywhere. There wasn't any payoff except more of same. And it was a eureka moment for me that still echoes in my mind, because I began to realize I have a power to direct my thoughts, do I not? Don't I have a power to choose where my focus goes, what I want to dwell upon, what I want to soak up? And I can change what I soak up. And I will feel the effects of that. It will change the quality of my days. And I began to do that kind of work strongly in that period of time. That's why I resonate, because of that kind of experience in my life, that's why I resonate with the work of Byron Katie, who Dr. Harkey's going to do a workshop about at noon today, because Byron Katie's work is all about getting a hold of that negativity bias of the brain and questioning the ideas, the beliefs, the thoughts that are causing us our misery, and beginning to shift what we're soaking up. And it came out of her experience in a similar, even more dramatic way than I experienced. She went through a terrible depression, was suicidal, was addicted. At the age of 43, she was in some halfway house, living in an attic. Didn't feel worthy of sleeping in the bed, so she was sleeping on the floor. She just had a second marriage fail. She was miserable. And then she woke one morning. Michelle, I'm telling the story, probably you're going to be telling it later. She woke one morning, a cockroach went across her foot, and she woke up and had this moment of clear consciousness that she realized her misery was caused by the thoughts she was believing. And that she could, by changing those thoughts and questioning them, that misery could be lifted. And this is what led her to develop what she calls the work. And it's just a process of self-inquiry, just several questions that you use to question the thoughts that are causing you misery. And it can be a way of liberating ourselves from misery-inducing ideas that have been with us for a long while, so we can stop picking that bag up by the bed when we wake in the morning. So I hope that many of you will consider that workshop opportunity today. It can be an introduction to something that could be very useful to you in your own work. What else can we do to practice this law of absorption better? We can definitely soak it up better outwardly. Spring is a wonderful time to do that. Get outside, soak up nature in any way that speaks to you. I started last summer. This is me. I love flowers. I love birds. These things really nourish my spirit. I started a wildflower directory last year. I don't know why it took me 20 years to think of this idea, because I've lived in our property about 20. Just last year I thought, there's this lovely sequence of wildflowers that come out in our woods, and I've never really tracked them. So I started a directory last spring, and I'm continuing it now, and I go out, almost every day to see what's blooming today, because wildflowers are very ephemeral. Some of them are only around a day or two. And I've had quite a round of cut-leaved toothwort and yellow trout lilies and white trout lilies and wood anemones and spring beauties and bush mallow and mayapple. Any of you have any of these? Lots of mayapple blooming today. And it's just a sequence that comes, and I take pictures of them and I put them in my directory. And it's enhanced my sense of, I'm soaking it up. I'm soaking up the woods better. I'm soaking up what's around me that was always there, but I wasn't seeing them. And I think a lot of people don't see them. They just see weeds or things growing, and they're exquisitely beautiful little flowers. It's the same thing with bird life all around us. For years, I was not a bird watcher. In those grad school years, for instance, when I was impressed, birds were just, there's birds out there, I don't know, they're brown mostly, that was kind of a perception. I maybe knew the cardinal and the blue jay, and that was, and then I got interested in it. I started looking took some Audubon field trips, I started buying some guidebooks, and it's something that just, the more you learn, the more you see, the better your vision becomes, the more you're able to soak up. Joe and I took a little field trip to Green Lawn Cemetery with a group a couple weeks ago, and we saw a juvenile great horned owl that's nesting down there, and we saw another new one for us, a ruby-crowned kinglet, beautiful little bird. And of course we maintain our feeders, and spring is a wonderful time because birds are migrating through. You see unexpected birds now. Just this past week we saw an eastern towhee and a red-headed woodpecker, which is kind of a rare sight, that all red head. It nourishes deeply. You soak it up, and it feels a nourishment that makes you more peaceful, makes you more content. I think anyone who's an artist has learned to see and soak up beauty in whatever way is sort of their particular niche, whether they're landscape or seascape or what kind of artist they are. But we went to Linda Wessner's wonderful art presentation this past week, where she talked about her work doing colored pencil drawings, and maybe some acrylics or oils too, but of some of the abandoned houses and fields and trees, properties that are being lost to development in Delaware County. When Linda looks at an abandoned house and the tree and the field that are neglected around it, she sees rich, multi-generational stories in them. Somebody else might see an old house that's run down and fallen apart and it's going to come down soon. She sees stories, and she creates that. She puts that into her paintings and into her drawings. She's learned to see that, and she soaked that up. That's an enhancement, what she's able to see. I think that's true of all artists. They've learned to see better, and that's given them a deeper sense of the beauty that surrounds them. Vincent van Gogh, of course, was one of the Impressionists. He painted direct from life because he wanted to absorb the feeling of nature as he was painting, to get that into the painting he was working on. And you see that in his paintings, like so many of the Impressionists. You see light, you see the radiating light and how it's shifting moment by moment. In one of his letters to his brother Theo, to whom he wrote about daily, we have a book at home of all his letters to Theo. He advised his brother, who was an art dealer, he said, admire as much as you can. Most people do not admire enough. Soak it up. Whatever you love, whatever you find beautiful, soak it up. Go to museums, go out in nature, go for hikes, go wherever. that you can soak something up that resonates with you. So we can do that outwardly. We can also practice absorption. It's equally important, if not more so, inwardly. And that's where spiritual practice comes in, prayer. Just a few moments of prayer or focusing time in the morning where you're aware there's an energy, a presence with you, a power and presence that flows through you, and you're open to that and aware of that and affirming that's going to be with you through the day. That's a kind of nourishment we can take in inwardly that will change the quality of our lives. Jesus said the kingdom of heaven is within you. It's within you. We can tap into it. We can commune with that inwardly. We can soak it up. We can absorb it from right within ourselves. Myrtle Fillmore has this lovely quote about this. It sounds like she's talking about the law of absorption to me. She said, God in the midst of us is a great steady stream of renewing and cleansing and vitalizing life, and we can have the use of this life if we will open up the channels of its flowing and ourselves draw from this source. Open up the channels and draw from that source within us. Absorb. My old minister friend Ingi said, go into prayer taking a bucket. That's a phrase I've always liked, because I think I've often thought we don't expect enough from our prayers. We don't go in with a bucket. We're not expecting to receive that much. And I think he's saying we should expect to receive. Go in ready to draw from that wellspring that's deeper than you can imagine. So go in with that expectation. There's so much, I think, around us in the world, so many restless, searching people trying so hard to get their needs met outwardly. And I think it's a principle of life that I think maybe Reverend Ingi was talking about with his law of absorption, that until we can feed ourselves inwardly, we can't get a clear picture of what external things are needed. We need to start with nourishing ourselves, and then we have a better sense of what else is needed and what else to draw on. Ingi said, if we can feed some of the inner hungers first, we may find it a simpler matter to feed the remaining outer hungers. I think that's true. I think that's been my experience. Our needs get easier to meet if we are nurturing ourselves inwardly. You're going to church, that's a good start. If you have a prayer meditation practice, that's a good start. If you have any kind of habits in your day that nourish you inwardly, a walk in the park, a few moments in the quiet in the morning, it doesn't have to be anything particularly special. It doesn't take any expertise. It can help to take classes and things like that to deepen our awareness and our ideas about how to draw from source. The wonderful Lisa Ferraro is going to do a class on meditation for us this summer, starting I think July 16th, for several sessions. She did a meditation workshop last year. How many of you attended her? It was a wonderful experience. She's a good meditation teacher, and she's going to be back to do that on several Tuesday evenings. That would be a wonderful opportunity to draw some, deepen your practice on, kind of tapping into that wellspring and drawing from it easily, more regularly. But another simple practice you could begin to practice right now in this wonderful time of spring is just every morning for a few moments to just sit and contemplate yourself soaking up the energy of God. And as your eyes are closed and you're breathing in and out, let's just do that right now. So we close our eyes, we breathe in and out. We're aware that that energy of God is flowing through us, circulating throughout our being. Without any effort or strain or struggle on our part, it just flows through us. God being God in us, creative energy, renewing life, steadying peace, flowing throughout our being, body, mind, and spirit. And we just draw from it, and we just soak it up, and we let it flow. And we remind ourselves that that energy is going to be with us all through the day ahead. And we can rest in that, knowing we are nourished by it and guided by it, and all is well. And so it is, amen. Law of absorption. I soak up goodness within and without, and I am blessed. That's my affirmation if you'd like to join. Let me say it once more. I soak up goodness within and without, and I am blessed. Together? I soak up goodness within and without, and I am blessed.